Welcome to the beginning of the end of this kind of half-assed project I have going on here. So, I'm going to lead right off with saying that the instruction manual that comes with the Inkbird PID controller is useless unless you speak translated Chinese and have a master's degree in electrical engineering. The short of it is and this is, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of heat on this one because I was always taught that common was neutral. Apparently, in Chinese PID controllers, common is actually communications. The other thing is, on the instructions here, it says posts 9 and 10 are power in. Well, that's fine and dandy if you are using 220 volts and you don't use a ground or neutral. With 120 volt wiring, you need to use both 9 and 10. You can go either way. 9 can be neutral and 10 can be power or black, or vice versa. That was my first screw up. My second screw up was I wanted to reintegrate this manual or analog gauge into my fancy little setup I got going here, which really isn't all that fancy. So, and I wanted to mount it on this side of the kiln so I could read it while I'm working. Now, I turned this thing on about 15 minutes ago, and I've already shot 3 videos, all of which I think I'm probably going to throw away. But we're up to pretty close to the temperature. Now, there's a little light on here that tells you whether or not it's working, that it's heating or cool, like that it's actually the solid state relay is opened or closed. There, now it goes off. So just as it doesn't want to overshoot the temperature, which is a little bit problematic, I may have to set the temperature a little bit higher because it won't actually get up to 1050. That's another thing. I had to set this in Celsius and then go back to Fahrenheit for units because, not for nothing, it would have taken me a week to set this thing at 1050 degrees Fahrenheit because it only goes up at tenths at a time. I somehow or another, by blindly stabbing at the buttons, I got it to go to 1050. But now it'll go up by the degree as opposed to the tenth of the degree. That's how accurate this thing is supposed to be. So they don't tell you, they don't really cover all that much in the instructions. My recommendation is to, if you buy the Inkbird or whatever the manufacturer is, somebody took the time to make a video to show you how to do it a little bit better than those Chinese instructions that were translated in English, translated back into Chinese, and then translated back into English again. Because that's the way those instructions read. So yeah, my other mistake was when I wired the thermocouple in. I'm reusing my old thermocouple for the time being because I have another thermocouple coming. I want to use the analog gauge with the old thermocouple, and I want to add the thermocouple to it. So, and then disconnect the controller from the analog thermocouple and then have it run into the kiln at the bottom of the kiln. As it stands right now, this thermocouple goes in at the top of the kiln. The problem is the difference, the variation in temperature between the top of the kiln and the bottom of the kiln is significant, like 200 or 300 degrees. I mean, at the top of the kiln, it'll be 1050. Well, at the bottom of the kiln, unless it's closed and soaks for a couple hours, it's going to be like 900 or something. And I'm fairly sure that's why I've had some failures over the recent months. The other problem I have is I can't strike some of the colors. The whole reason I wanted this digital controller is so I can precisely control my striking temperatures. A couple of the colors that I use have very narrow striking temperatures. And when I say narrow, I mean within 200 degrees, and it needs to soak. For the sake of argument, the ruby red needs to soak at 1100 degrees Fahrenheit for like 3 hours, and then you get a beautiful ruby red out of it. If you don't do that, it either gets livery or it just doesn't strike. It just doesn't look right. So that's that for the time being. That's why this isn't buttoned up. I want to get this video out, and I got a new video I want to shoot. So the new video is going to be me hooking up my oxygen compressor system. So there you go. Ta-da! What a pain in the butt that was. And like I said, if I had to do it all over again, and I had the money, that's the other thing, is if I had the money, I would probably buy a new kiln with the digital thermostat already installed, or the digital controller already installed. This kiln's so old that, they didn't have, well, they had digital controllers back then, but they were $1,000. Now they're $500. I know why it's $500. It's because it comes pre-programmed, and all this stuff was all fit in there. I mean, it took me forever to make this hole and to make this hole. These were just holes, but cutting square holes is a pain in the ass. I saved you watching me cut square holes. There's plenty of guys on the internet that cut square holes. It's much more interesting to listen to me bitch and complain. I figured I'd shoot a little B-roll here. Gut in the way. So a little bit of B-roll. This is the analog gauge, and this is the digital gauge. Now they're both running off the same thermocouple, but believe it or not, they're both pretty close. This is the actual temperature, and this is the set temperature. And I'm not sure if I can barely read it without it being on video. The reason this thing is hanging out in space too, all sketchy, is I have another thermocouple coming. This is all the tools, actually about maybe 3/4 of the tools that it took me to put that thing together. So there you go. Inkbird PID controller, retrofitted to my old Gen Ken